"Get rid of that dog by tomorrow or you and it are out," Richard snarled, his voice echoing in the corridor. He jabbed a finger at the "No Pets" sign on the wall as Maya clutched her terrier Leo to her chest. Her knees weakened at the threat, but beneath her fear something hardened. Richard smirked, convinced he'd already won. He had no idea who he was up against. Maya Jefferson was no stranger to the pain of losing a home. As a little girl, she had shivered on a cold sidewalk next to her parents and a pile of hastily packed boxes after an eviction. In her mother's arms that night, Maya had vowed through tears that one day she would fight against that kind of injustice. Years later, she made good on that promise. Maya became a lawyer, determined to protect families from the very heartbreak she endured. With every case she won for a wronged tenant, a piece of that old wound healed. By her mid-30s, Maya was known for her calm, fierce dedication in the courtroom, a guardian for those who felt powerless. Leo was more than just a pet. Maya had rescued the terrier during a pro bono case when his owner, a domestic abuse victim, tragically passed away. Ever since, Leo's gentle presence had been her comfort on lonely nights, a living reminder of why she fought, to help others find the safe home they all deserved. When Maya moved into this Lincoln Park apartment building, she thought she had finally found a refuge. It was a modest unit in a well-kept complex, close to downtown and her work. The lease was strict, no pets allowed. But Maya couldn't abandon Leo, he was family. She hoped that if she kept a low profile and was an ideal tenant, the landlord might not notice just one small, quiet dog. For a short while, it worked. But every day, Maya lived with quiet anxiety, wondering how long their luck would last. She paid her rent early, kept Leo out of sight, and stayed courteous to everyone. Still, each time footsteps echoed in the hallway, her heart would pound at the thought of an unsmiling knock on her door. Richard Geller, the building's owner and self-appointed manager, enforced his rules with an iron fist. No bikes in the hallway, no late-night music, no personal door decorations. Every week, a new notice appeared in the lobby, each ending with "Management, R. Geller." Tenants whispered that he had driven people out for even the smallest infractions. Under his watch, the building was pristine, but a quiet tension ran through its halls. Maya had met Richard only briefly when signing the lease. He noticed the law books in her bag and handed over the keys with a thin-lipped smile, along with a thick leaflet of the building's rules and regulations. Maya did her best to follow every rule, except for one. 2 months passed before the inevitable happened. One chilly October evening, Maya returned from a long day at the courthouse with Leo trotting at her heel. The sky was dimming as she slipped through the lobby, hoping to make it upstairs unnoticed. She was tired and hungry, already picturing a quiet dinner. But as she closed the lobby door behind her, she nearly collided with Richard. He stood in the corridor, arms folded tightly. For a moment, neither spoke. Richard's steely gaze had locked not on Maya, but on the little dog at her side. Maya's heart plummeted. In Richard's hand was a copy of the lease, her lease, folded open to the bold words, "No pets." A chill ran through Maya. She opened her mouth, unsure whether to greet him or plead her case, but no sound came out. Richard broke the silence first. "Miss Jefferson," he said coldly, tapping the paper in his hand, "perhaps you think I wouldn't notice your friend here." He lifted the lease and gave it a shake, his lips curving in a humorless smile. "Rules are rules, and you've broken them." Maya swallowed hard, forcing herself to meet his eyes. Her voice was soft. I can explain. Leo is really no trouble, sir. Richard held up a hand sharply. His fake smile dropped. "I don't care what your explanation is," he snapped. "The lease is crystal clear." He nodded toward the printed "No Pets" clause as if speaking to a child. "You're in violation. Period." Maya's throat tightened. She had faced down bullies in court, but here, in her own hallway, her confidence wavered. "I understand, but please," she managed, trying to keep her voice steady. Leo is all I have. I'll pay a pet deposit or an extra fee if I need to. He's well behaved and—" Richard's nostrils flared. He stepped forward, lowering the leash so his eyes bored into hers. "No." His voice was dangerously quiet. "You will not pay a fee. You will get rid of the dog." He paused, enunciating each word with contempt. 24 hours. If that mutt is still here tomorrow, consider yourself evicted. Maya stood rooted to the spot, a wave of dread crashing over her. Evicted. The very word felt like a punch to the gut, stirring memories she had fought so hard to overcome. Leo sensed her fear and pressed against her leg. Many people would have crumbled or lashed out at such a threat. What would you do in her place? For a heartbeat, Maya felt 8 years old again. Standing in the cold, clutching a box of belongings. She blinked hard, forcing the image away. "Sir, please," she whispered, voice trembling but determined. "I know the rule, but I'm begging you for some compassion." Richard rolled his eyes and cut her off with a scathing laugh. "Compassion? Don't lecture me, Miss Lawyer," he sneered, practically spitting out her profession. "Your lease doesn't bend to your degree or your sob story." He gestured at Leo, who trembled slightly at his tone. "Evicting you would be doing this building a favor. I won't have rule breakers here." Maya's fear began to mix with anger. He knew she was a lawyer, yet he was treating her like dirt under his shoe. "Mr. Geller, I have rights as a tenant," she started, her voice gaining strength. But Richard stepped even closer, towering over her. "Not for long," he hissed. With that, he reached into his jacket and pulled out a paper he had prepared, a formal notice. He thrust it into Maya's hand. Her stomach dropped as she read the bold title, "Notice to Vacate." 24 hours, Richard repeated, voice dripping with condescension. "Or I'll have the sheriff escort you and your dog off my property." Maya's eyes burned with tears she refused to let fall. Her worst nightmare was unfolding right at her doorstep. Richard gave one last satisfied glare, then pivoted on his heel and stalked away down the hall. His footsteps echoed as Maya stood shaking, Leo pressed against her calf. In the span of a minute, the secure life she'd built for them had been shattered. The moment Richard's door slammed, Maya felt the dam inside her break. Back in her apartment, she sank onto the sofa and finally let the tears flow. Leo jumped up and licked her chin, whining softly as if to say, "I'm here." Maya hugged him close, her body shaking with sobs she'd held back for so long. It was happening again. The fear, the uncertainty, the feeling of being a helpless child about to lose everything. For a few minutes, she cried into Leo's fur, grieving not just for herself, but for the little girl she'd been, and the home she never wanted to lose again. But through those tears, resolve slowly bloomed. Maya wiped her face on her sleeve, drawing a shuddering breath. Emotional. No, not this time. She refused to be that powerless child ever again. If Richard wanted a fight, he would get one, and he had no idea who he was up against. She grabbed a tissue and blew her nose, gently patting Leo. "It's okay, baby," she whispered, voice still trembling but growing steadier. With red-rimmed eyes, Maya rose and cleared a space on the coffee table. If she only had 24 hours, she was going to make each one count. Maya pulled out a thick binder of tenant law and her laptop. The hours ticked by as she worked in a frenzy, researching statutes, drafting letters, compiling evidence of every possible violation Richard might have committed. The soft click of keys and the rustle of paper were the only sounds aside from Leo's quiet breaths. Maya's legal mind, sharpened by years of fighting for others, was now wholly focused on her own battle. She remembered the stories her neighbors told. A woman threatened over her service dog, a family pressured to leave after complaining about heat, a single mother forced out by a sudden rent hike. These wouldn't just be anecdotes. They would be evidence. She typed out everything, building a timeline of Richard's harassment and unfair practices. With each detail, her confidence grew. Richard had bullied so many, and now all those pieces were coming together like a puzzle. By dawn, Maya had drafted a comprehensive complaint. She would file a lawsuit alleging harassment and illegal eviction practices. She even found a precedent for getting an injunction to stop Richard's 24-hour eviction threat. In the soft morning light, surrounded by piles of notes and law books, Maya allowed herself a small, hopeful smile. This was far from over, but she finally felt in control. Maya realized others were ready to stand with her against injustice. If you believe in doing what's right, stand with us too. True to her word, Maya moved fast. That same day, she reached out to a tenants' rights colleague to help file the lawsuit. By evening, Richard was served with legal papers. The very next morning, a courier handed him the thick envelope in the lobby, right in front of several tenants retrieving their mail. Richard's eyes widened as he tore it open. Page after page detailed his intimidation, unfair evictions, and discriminatory behavior. He skimmed furiously, face turning redder with each line. Other tenants hovered nearby, watching silently. Maya stood a few steps back, her heart pounding but her chin held high. Richard crumpled one paper in his fist and glared at Maya with undisguised rage. "You think this is going to scare me? You?" he snarled under his breath. He took a menacing step toward her. "Your fancy law degree won't save you here. I'll fight this and I will win. Don't get too comfortable." Maya's palms were sweaty, but she didn't flinch. She met Richard's stare with a calm, steely gaze. In a measured voice, she answered, "This isn't just about me, Mr. Geller. It's about everyone here. We all deserve to be treated fairly." She swept her arm to indicate the small group of tenants watching from the hall. Some of them straightened, mustering courage at her words. "We're not going anywhere without a fair fight." Richard scoffed, but Maya caught the flicker of uncertainty in his eyes as he noticed neighbors inching closer, nodding in agreement. His grip on the crumpled notice loosened. For a moment, Richard had no snappy reply. The bully landlord was facing something he hadn't expected: resistance. He mustered a sneer and threw the wadded paper at Maya's feet. "We'll see about that," he spat, before shouldering past the onlookers and stomping toward the exit. Maya stood there in the lobby, her heart hammering. Slowly, the tenants around her broke into relieved smiles. A few even clapped her on the back or whispered thank you. In that moment, Maya realized this fight was no longer hers alone. The people of the building were behind her. Over the following weeks, the legal battle took on a life of its own. Richard, furious and prideful, refused to back down. He tried to evict Maya formally, but her injunction stopped him cold. More tenants joined her cause, sharing stories and evidence that strengthened the case against him. In the months that followed, Richard's fortunes unraveled. Legal fees, fines, and public shame mounted until he could no longer sustain the building. By spring, the bank foreclosed on the property and put it up for auction. Summer sunshine bathed the front of the apartment building as a bright yellow foreclosure notice was nailed to the door and a sold sign hung below it. Richard stood off to one side, clutching a half-empty box of his belongings. The building he once ruled was no longer his. He looked on in disbelief as a locksmith finished changing the locks to his former office. He didn't yet know the full truth of what had happened. The buyer who had snapped up the building at auction was an investment group, one quietly organized by Maya. She had made sure her name stayed behind the scenes. It wasn't about revenge. It was about protecting the people in this building. Richard was packing up under the watch of a hired security guard. Tenants gathered at a respectful distance, murmuring with a mix of nerves and excitement. They'd heard rumors that the new owner had ties to someone in the building, someone on their side. Maya stepped forward through the small crowd, Leo trotting beside her on his leash. She wore a smart blazer and her posture was confident but gentle. As Richard emerged from his office for the last time, dragging his box with knuckles white, he froze at the sight of Maya. For a long moment, they simply looked at each other. Maya's heart fluttered. This was the first time she'd seen him since that day in the lobby. Richard's face contorted through a series of emotions: confusion, indignation, then a flash of realization. Surprised. "You," he breathed, eyes widening at the documents in her hand, the title and sale papers. Maya gave a polite, calm smile. "Good afternoon, Mr. Geller," she said softly. I'm here on behalf of the new ownership." Her emphasis on that last word wasn't lost on him. Richard's cheeks went pale. The box in his arms trembled. "You bought," he stammered, unable to finish the sentence. He looked around at the watching tenants, some of whom were biting back smiles. This was her doing. Maya stepped up to him. Leo growled faintly, but Maya soothed the dog with a little pat. She held out her hand. "The keys, please." Richard's jaw tightened. For a second, it seemed he might refuse out of sheer spite. But the security guard took a step closer, and Richard's bravado crumbled. With shaking fingers, he fumbled out the jingling ring of master keys he'd carried for years. One by one, he slid them off the ring, dropping each into Maya's palm. The final key, the one to the front door, he hesitated over. That key had been power to him. Now, with a visible swallow, he placed it with the rest. Maya closed her fingers around the keys. They felt heavy and cool, the weight of responsibility. She watched Richard, taking in the defeat etched on his face. He thought he could bully her and get away with it. Did justice win in the end? Richard lowered his gaze. Without another word, he turned and walked down the steps into the afternoon light. The security officer followed at his heels, ensuring he left the property for good. A few tenants exchanged looks of amazement. Was it truly over? Maya exhaled, realizing she'd been holding her breath. Leo wagged excitedly at her side, sensing the shift in energy. It was over, and in the very way Richard least expected. She cleared her throat and turned to face the gathering of tenants. Dozens of eyes, formerly filled with worry, were now shining with gratitude and hope. "From today," Maya announced warmly, "this building will be managed with fairness and respect for everyone who lives here. I promise you that." There was a heartbeat of silence, then the crowd broke into grateful applause. Some laughed in relief, a few wiped away happy tears. Neighbors who had rarely spoken were now hugging and clapping each other on the back. In all the commotion, someone started a cheer for Maya, but she quickly waved her hands modestly, her cheeks flushing. It wasn't just her victory, it was theirs. Later that week, a new brass plaque was mounted by the entrance, exactly where Richard's stern notices used to be. Its engraved message gleamed in the sunlight for all to see. "This building is now managed with justice. If it's your home, respect is your right." Maya smiled as she ran her fingers over the words. It felt real now. The fear that had haunted these halls was gone, replaced by something new and good. That evening, as dusk painted the sky in soft pinks and golds, Maya sat on the front steps with Leo tucked happily in her lap. She watched lights flicker on in window after window, families cooking dinner, children doing homework, elders resting without fear. A gentle peace hung in the warm summer air. Maya closed her eyes for a moment and soaked it in. In her mind, she imagined her parents were watching and smiling, proud of the justice she had brought home. Leo's wet nose nudged her chin, making her eyes flutter open. Maya giggled softly and scratched behind his ears. "We did it, buddy," she whispered. The little dog gazed back with adoration, as if he understood. Maya pulled him close, feeling the steady beat of his heart against hers. The nightmare was over. In its place stood a community and a woman stronger than before. As Maya looked up at the building she now helped own, a serene smile graced her face. For the first time in a long time, she felt truly at home.